Obsession by Lilladyeva. Released into a darkened world, and far from the glow of lamplight, the moth fluttered blindly. It turned this way and that, changing directions, trying to find its way. Its dim eyes did not see the bat until it was too late. The swift-winged creature soared by silently and caught the moth within its jaws and crunched down, ending the tiny creature's life instantly as the bat continued to fly. The man, who had unknowingly condemned the moth to its death, had returned to his seat in front of his books. He ran his ink-stained fingers through his greasy hair. He seemed unaware of his appearance, and the smudged fingerprints dotting his face as he rubbed his eyes. The candle flame guttered as the tiny stub neared its end. Another light appeared in the library, bobbing between the stacks. A small flame held up by a woman in robes, hair in a neat bun, candle held in her outstretched hand. "Joseph, are you still here? It's time to go." The dirty man did not stir. He did not even look up from his books. "Just a little longer. I've almost got it." The librarian put a hand on his shoulder. "It will keep until tomorrow. I've given you enough time today. I need to sleep, and you do too." "I can't sleep. Not while Joseph, she's dead. And she'll be just as dead tomorrow." Joseph stood up quickly, sending papers scattering to the floor. He held out an accusing finger. "You dare! How could you?" The librarian picked up the papers and gently placed them back on his desk. "Joseph, we were friends once. This is killing you. You can't bring her back. It's time to let go." Joseph grabbed his bag and hastily shoved things into it in his blind fury. "Well, thank you for the advice, but unlike you, I know what I'm doing. I don't need your warnings," he huffed, pushing past angrily and exited. The librarian sighed. "I'll see you tomorrow," she spoke, having repeated the same words last night, too. I guess I will start going into things. So this story is a sequel to the story written for Mr. Prompt, which, and there's the timer. Sorry, timer, but, we're resetting you. They're my goblin characters, so I attributed them as leg goblins. That's awesome. Are they in Ibrahim's world? Well, I guess maybe everything's in the same world, but do they interact with him? Because I feel like that would be fun. My first question is for you guys, which is, did any of you not read the prequel? And if you did, was anything about this story confusing, or did anything throw you off? Anything like that? They keep having bandwidth in their little backpack sacks. That's awesome. They don't eat like people or normal food or anything. They eat bandwidth. I like that. That'd be hilarious, but no, they're a separate setting. Gotcha. Well, maybe you should make it AU. That I still haven't used the challenge, because there was that time a few weeks ago where we were talking about the question of like writing in a genre you're not familiar with, and I put that as the challenge. But something else we talked about was write an AU. That in order to make you feel more interested, use the characters you love in a genre you're not as familiar with. And so I was thinking of making those separate challenges, and I still haven't done the AU challenge, so that would be a fun one to do for that challenge. Okay, so anyways, alright, so I really like this story. I don't really have very many critiques for it, but my main critique is at the beginning, so I think I will start with it. So my main critique has to do with this first paragraph. Now, the first paragraph is very well written, and it's very evocative. I can totally imagine it. It totally feels like the beginning of a movie of I don't know, you just see pretty moth fluttering along, and then it gets nommed on by a bat, and then the camera zooms in on the library window, and then you see, the man in there. So It kind of reminds me, I guess, of like that scene in Polar Express where all the animals are like bouncing the ticket around, basically, but more violent. So I do think the scene is very well written and evocative. Stop! No! No, sir! They wanted to give us an ad right when Little Lady Eva came back. But Little Lady Eva, real quick, I was just saying that I don't have very many critiques for the story. I think it's very good. But my critique is at the beginning, so I am going to start with it. But basically, so as I said, I think the scene's very well written, very evocative. I don't think that you did anything wrong in describing the scene. However, the scene seems completely unrelated to the rest of the story. And even symbolically, and we'll talk about that in a second, but even symbolically, it doesn't seem to quite fit. And of course, anybody who read the prequel will be like, oh yeah, I remember, like the moth that he let out. But I feel like people who have not read the prequel will be like, okay, we killed a moth, and now we move on. So that's why that's a large reason why I'm curious what happens, for those who haven't read the prequel. But I think this would really work if it was a flame. That if the moth finds, a lantern like outside of a shop or maybe just a lamppost or something. Well, I guess a lamppost wouldn't be an open flame, but some kind of open flame, and it flies towards it and ends up burning up in the flames. That would symbolically fit with what's happening with Joseph, that he has this flame, that he is carrying for this girl, and that flame is burning him up. And so, but what Joseph is going through, I can't really symbolically liken it to a bat eating him. I can't really, it doesn't symbolically work as well that, like, yes, his obsession is just like the bat that ate the moth. It's like, especially because, it's this slow burning thing. This isn't something that is consuming him quickly. This isn't the bat that came out of nowhere and snatched him. This is something that has been going on for a while, and it's burning hotter and hotter until there's nothing of him left. So I think this would work quite well as the flame because it would fit the prompt and because it would work symbolically with what's happening to Joseph. But as is, even though it's a cool setting thing and even though it's a connection to the last story, I don't really feel like it adds much. That it just starts with, cute moth dies. All right, on to the actual story, and so that would be my biggest critique for the story, is that either removing this or using an image that symbolically fits a bit better, I think would work better. I guess come to think of it, I guess if the moth lived, it might symbolically work. I don't think it would symbolically work as much as the flame would, but it could be like, there is still hope. Either there is still hope or it's carrying on in the dark, just like he is carrying on in the dark, and he also is having hope, kind of thing. So I guess it would depend on what symbolically you would want from it. Like I said, it's just the issue of I'm not really able to see a good connection with what is there, if that makes sense. I guess the next one is one of my minimal critiques / questions too, which is that I don't think any modern book should get ink on your fingers. And so either he's taking notes or the book is so old that it's one that will come off. And so I'm kind of curious if that was the intention. I do like the image nonetheless. Like I said, you are very good with all these images, and I can totally imagine him, sitting there, maybe shaking a little bit, running that greasy hand, or not greasy hand, ink-stained hand through his greasy hair kind of thing. This kind of happened to me when I was reading Pride and Prejudice the other day. I don't know if people saw it, but I don't know how ink got on my hands, but I think it was from earlier that day, because I was doing art earlier that day. Because I put my fingers on the book, and then the fingerprints were on it, and I was like, oh, we're not going to deal with that. We're just going to keep going. So I can relate to that feeling of like, we're going to ignore that and keep going. But I like how you did, there's the ad again. Okay, I don't think I can keep snoozing it, but yes. Bad ad, big bad. Oh, meowy kitty. Would you like to keep us company during the ad? Come here, babe. Yes. Come here. Come here, babe. Good boy. Good boy. Good kitty. Here, babe. Why not I show you to the peoples? Why don't I show you to the peoples? There he is. And there are his feet. There he is. That's right. Oh, baby cat. Do you see something out the window, babe? What do you see? Is that a birdie? Do you see a birdie out the window? Yeah, the birdie. Oh, there's the ad. Okay, I'll show you Bella. Bella chilling out. Stretch. Oh, don't get up, Bean. Don't get up. I'm sorry. Bella. Kitty, baby cat. Ads finally hit. You say that like it's like a bomb or something, but it's the ads are like a plane going over you guys, and you're like, when's the next one gonna hit us? Kitties. Bella, dead to the world. Long boy impression. What's long boy? Is that something specific, or is it just, cats being long? Cats being long, yes, the rich. A second ad has hit the street. Yeah, exactly. Just long cat, gotcha. Okay, baby, now you're coming. There you go, that's the place. All right. Okie dokie. I like this image too. Very evocative. I can imagine that as well. Kitty, no, I just let you in. Their conversation is great and really flows well. So I feel like this story addresses exactly what I was critiquing the last story for. That I was critiquing the last story for not feeling clear as to what was going on by the end. And I was like, I don't need much, but just a little bit of context of what he's doing, what he's about. Then that would be helpful. And I feel like this story does that perfectly. Chef's kiss. Because, like, I can't sleep. Not while that already gives me the context I need. Like, honestly, if you had, like, ended the last story with a line just like that, I think I would have been fine. Like, okay, there's some sort of she that he wants to help or resurrect or something like that. And then the response being this is even better. Like, I love this line. This might be my favorite line in the piece, that she's dead and she'll be just as dead tomorrow. First of all, that gives, the audience context, and we're like, oh, okay, so it is that good necromancy. But then the second part is really cool, because it's like, you're acting like you're rushed. You're acting like you're out of time, but she's not going to be more dead tomorrow. Like, that is a static state that she's in, and she's going to be in that state tomorrow just as she is today. Okay, fine. I require a hasty exodus. Yeah. Nice. Y'all got that good necromancy. I I love that. We should. I do need to submit this as a prompt, don't I? That good necromancy. I'll write it down. All right. But anyway, so I really like that line a lot. And it's not like mean or anything. It's just matter of fact. It's just like, hey, she's dead, and she's also going to be dead tomorrow. And it really puts you into his mindset too, because it shows you that he, like, what he's feeling. That he's feeling like, I have to do this. I have to keep brushing. I'm almost there. And it feels like that's probably what he's like every night. That every night he's like, I've almost got it. And, this will keep going for however long it keeps going. And I think that's really cool, and I like that a lot. I really like this image too. I can totally imagine that, and like in this case, like, I don't need more information besides like, you dare. Like, of course he's gonna be mad that she points that out. I really like this line too. Joseph, we were friends once. This is killing you. You can't bring her back. It's time to let go. I especially like this is killing you. I'm always a fan of the idea of spiritual death, and this feels like maybe both, but definitely a spiritual death of like, the friend that I knew is either gone or is disappearing. And I'm kind of curious about that. I'm curious if he's going to drive himself mad or if he's already mad at this point. But anyways, I love this idea of like, hey, I can't stand idly by and let you do this. Like, this is killing you. This is killing the friend I once knew. And I like that a lot. What was I gonna say? But yeah, I like it more than if you had said, this is driving you mad, because I think it's just so much more interesting and evocative of a word to say, this is killing you. And it could be that, like, literally, like, he isn't taking care of himself. And also, that is part of the context that I wanted last week, that this story more clearly explains, that he just is so obsessed with bringing her back that he's not taking care of himself. So I like that as well. But yeah, so maybe, that will go so far as to actually kill him. But even if it doesn't, it is killing him on the inside. And I think that's very cool. Well, not cool that it's killing him, but a cool image. And then I can totally, this feels so realistic. like I've totally heard this kind of thing of like, well, thank you for your advice. But unlike you, I know what I'm doing, said the crazy man who had no idea what he was doing, basically. So that's like a perfect, very human response. I like that a lot. And it also works really well because it's like, thank you for your advice. And it wasn't really advice. It was just stating the facts. And that is totally how people will react in these kinds of scenarios. Where they'll be like, well, thanks for your advice and your opinions. And it's like, well, it wasn't advice or an opinion. It was an objective fact, but okay. I really love the last line as well. Like, oh, that's so tasty. That's such a cool way of conveying this idea of, like, first of all, it conveys her, I think you convey her attitude really well, that she really cares for him and doesn't want him to keep going down this path, but she also is kind of resigned to the fact that she knows he has to help himself. I definitely get that image. And so she kind of knows, no matter how much she says, hey, this isn't going to work, you should stop, she knows that she's not going to get through to him. She's going to keep trying, but she knows that it probably isn't going to work. And so I love that last line of, I'll see you tomorrow. And she repeated those words last night too, that it really shows the cyclical nature of what is going on here, that this sort of interaction happens every night, that every night he goes in and he's like, I'm almost there, and every night she's like, maybe not though, and he's like, but maybe yes though. And then she's like, well, I'll see you tomorrow. But cooler. Yeah, so I'm not doing a good job explaining myself today, but that line just hits me in all the right ways and is a great last line for the piece. Hang on. Are you gonna stay this time? Come here. Silly. But yeah, yeah, there you go. Kitty. Hi. Hello. Yeah, I've talked a lot about first lines, but I don't really talk a lot about last lines. But, and so I feel like I'm afraid of going too much into this because I might talk about it too long. But I think this is just such a great way to end the piece because it really feels like it wraps up the arc, because it's really interesting because this arc is a circle, and so a lot of the times you'll want to try to have that last line be like, all right, here's the end of the story, let's wrap it up. And in this case, it's instead of going like this, it goes like this. It goes, here's the end of the story, but it still wraps it up in this really cool way, and I like that a lot. I also think it's cool that we don't need to know who she is. We don't even need a name to get what's going on here. We don't know if this is a lover, a sister, a daughter, a mother. We don't know. A friend. It could be any kind of relationship. But we just know that this is a she that he cared about, and that's all we really need to know. And I think that works super well. But yeah, and like this is very realistic too. It's like, oh, you're still here? Like, hey, let's go to bed, bud. And he's like, just a little longer. I got it. And then she's also kind of doing the same thing here and going like, the books will be here tomorrow. And it's sort of this idea in both sides. The books will be here tomorrow, and she'll be dead tomorrow. Like, you don't have to do this tonight. You don't have to stay up all night and stop taking care of yourself to do this, which I think is cool. And there is my timer. Let's quick see what folks have been saying. Wolf says, I didn't read the prequel, but I didn't get confused. Gotcha. Interesting. Wolf says, I don't know, it could be meant to be an echo of what we're going to see. However, I don't know if it works like that. I think this is more of a tone setter, which is harder to do in 350 words. You're literally hand-capping yourself with the word count. However, it might be worth it if the atmosphere and vibes carry over to the story itself. It might be your mileage may vary situation. Very true. I mean, I guess I would argue in that case that the setting, the dark atmosphere, the moth fluttering, away, like, that sets the tone really well. But the bat coming in and just doing a heckin' murder, doing a heckin' chomp, doesn't really set the tone, because this story isn't like that. This story isn't violent, it's not sudden, it's very quiet, and so that quietness, yeah, that really does work at the beginning. And in that case, like, if it's meant to be a tone setter, I'd actually recommend just talking about the moth fluttering away. And you could even maybe talk about, like, the moth didn't know what it would find out here, if it would, be eaten by morning, or if it would survive, to see the sun. That would mirror Joseph better as well, in my mind, and then that would set the tone. But it's just the stark, sudden chomp that does not seem to fit with the story in multiple ways to me. Huh. Yes, says my wife. I did the same thing last week. I'm sorry to hear that, but also glad I'm not alone. That's awesome. Dead lovers putting the necro back in romancy. That's amazing. Putting the necro back in romancy. That'll work for a transformed prompt. Or I guess it could be like putting the romance back in. No, yeah, that's what it would be actually. Putting the the romance back in necromancy. I like that better. um I love the she's dead and she'll be just as dead tomorrow. It's so raw. And I wrote around that. That's great. Moth section was experiment, still a work in progress. That's fair. Perhaps the bath eating a moth was more foreshadowing of the horror that waits Joseph. That's the thing, though, is that, yes, it absolutely could be that, but you don't get that in this story. Like, these stories are meant to be self-contained, and I don't go too hard on that because I'm totally fine with people continuing universes and stuff like that. But that actually is something I'm going to talk about going forward this week, too. But like, they are meant to stand alone as best they can. And so if this is referencing something that will come in a later story, as long as this is meant to stand alone, I don't think it functions for that. And so, like I said, I think that an image that fits this story better would make it stand alone better, if that makes more sense. Dusset agreed with Aerith. That is meant to be destruction. Mm-hmm. But yes, thank you so much for submitting, Lilladyeva. Let's go on to Aerith's story. I mean, yes, like, there can be implications, but I'm trying to figure out why that doesn't work for me. Like, again, I think it's mostly just like the intense violence of it, that it's like, if that's what it's meant to be, it kind of seems like, yeah, he's gonna keep chugging along, and then all of a sudden something's gonna come up and destroy him in a later story. Maybe that's what happens, but that doesn't seem to be what's happening here. This is a slow burn. This is slowly killing him. And so, again, if the image is something that slowly kills the moth, or something like a flame that, you know, maybe doesn't kill it over, like, the course of hours, but is still, like, this consuming thing instead of this sudden thing, I think that would work better for me.